Loneliness need not be the curse of the divorced. One of the big results of divorce is, unfortunately, loneliness. We go from a couple to a single, or with even more difficulty, from a family to being single for half of the week, or 1 week on and 1 week off. We are social beings, and if we were meant to be living on our own, we would each be living on our own planet. That said, for many divorced couples, it is not a choice, but rather a consequence of their newly divorced life. We all know that things like smoking, drugs, and alcohol are dangerous for our health, but there is something we may have suspected, but which has now been proven to be much more hazardous. It is hard to imagine that when the world's population is nudging 7 billion people, that anyone could possibly be lonely. And yet in America it's estimated that 42.6 million Americans over the age of 45 suffer from chronic loneliness, and census data reveals more than 25% of the US population actually lives alone. Loneliness and social isolation raises your risk for premature death by as much as 50%. Apparently, loneliness can raise your blood pressure up 14 points or higher the longer that you are lonely. This in turn can increase the risk of heart disease, stroke and dementia, as well as higher levels of stress, poor sleep, increased inflammation and decreased immunity. In fact, over 70 studies carried out on more than 3.4 million people showed that you have an increased risk of mortality of 29% if you suffer from social isolation, 26% if you are lonely, and 32% if you live alone. Scary statistics indeed. With the high rate of divorce, this feeling of isolation and loneliness is also an unavoidable result of the turmoil and readjustment that people go through post-divorce. Just one generation ago, people commonly lived in the same town they grew up in, went to the local school, knew familiar people in the community, places, shop owners, pharmacists and doctors. They also knew the history of the community, its strengths and challenges, as they had collectively participated in it. They were an intrinsic part of that history, as was their family, friends and home, which is something people today rarely get to experience. I'm pleased to see that my concerns about the lack of community is also being felt by others. I've noticed that groups like Meetup and Stitch for the over 50s have emerged in all areas, doing a variety of different fun activities, and are filling a big void in many people's lives. Our need for a sense of belonging and socializing is becoming more recognized, as there has been a slight conscious shift from dating to socializing. These groups have allowed people to select an area of interest and to meet with others with similar interests, with no agenda other than to make new friends and to get out of the house, which for many has become their social prison. Understanding that feeling lonely is not a way people are meant to live is the first step towards taking the steps to change it in your life.